Welcome to the Hard Tech Podcast.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the Hard Tech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Hericus, my usual suspect, Grant Chapman.
How's it going, everybody?
And we've got a really fun guest today, Basher Tome from a company, if you're in the world of hard tech, if you love coffee, he's from Fellow. He's the senior manager in product design at Fellow. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know we were super excited to have the conversation as we were looking for different folks to have on the podcast. I think that Grant said if we get Fellow on, the entire team, including Grant and the rest of the engineering team here, were really, really excited about it. So excited to have you on.
Yeah, we might be violent coffee nerds in the office. I think that's a good way to put it. Coffee of all kinds. Cold coffee, hot coffee, coffee of creative ways, coffee of normal ways. We're big fans.
And for the folks that
Very
are
nice
just
of
less
you to
familiar,
say, by the way. I could have told you there's lower key ways to get a friends and family discount code, but I appreciate inviting me on the podcast.
yeah, this is all just our ploy to get some nice coffee makers and things like that.
Yeah, we're trying to upgrade the office setup again.
That's right. Well, thanks, everybody. This is the Hard Tech. I'm just kidding. No, but for the folks that are a little bit less familiar, Basher, would love to get a background on yourself and also just Fellow at large for the folks that are less familiar.
Sure. Yeah. I went to school for industrial design, and I've always been in the world of design. I started off really thinking as a lot more on the analog and hardware side. I found the Wikipedia entry for user experience design and then thought that seemed cool, so I changed my title on my website to that and sort of started my professional career going that way. But I never sort of lost the love for the hardware side of things, and especially looking at how talented people were at screen-based design and how okay a lot of the hardware stuff was. It felt like there was a lot more room to be unique and like help in that sort of space in between. So I really tried to push towards that in my career, and it's been fun trying to play that hybrid role. I think part of rejecting sort of a traditional title in that sense put a lot of onus on me to go and explain to people like what do I want to do and what do I want to figure out, and it's been healthy to some degree and sort of making me then think about that critically and go through it. Yeah, think about it sort of critically and be intentional about my career choices. But I've been really lucky, I think, in combination with that. So it's been really fun working on a variety of stuff.
No, that's
almost exclusively on the hardware side.
That's awesome. I mean, Purdue University here in Indiana has a UX degree, user experience degree, like on its own outside of the design school. And there's industrial designers and UX designers. And what are really fascinating to me are when you get one of either camp that goes to the other side professionally, right? You get the people that study UX that actually end up in industrial design professionally later in life through their career choices and stuff. And you get the people that are in industrial design that end up in user experience, whether it's digital or physical user experience, or my favorite one, place user experience. Basher, I don't know if you got to study that when you were at school. There's a huge like subset of UX at Purdue that is all about place, like museums, airports, like the blend of architecture and user experience, which is a really wild
I think
experience.
at other schools they call that architecture.
Right. Well, that would be the design of the building, just like industrial design is the design of the good. And then there's the user experience side of how that works, and it's such a cool degree that is like each, like you can like carve a face off of either one of the degrees to fit the other one in either digital, physical, or place from either degree. And I think there's like this, the faceting of these degrees and how they get shown up in professions get to be wild. Like, you know, what I work on, what
really
I'm
cool.
specialized in. I've met some really cool people along that path that, just like you, studied one and ended up practicing the other part way and creating their own path in a degree, in a professional program outside of their degree. So how do you describe what you get to do to someone who doesn't know what it is?
I mostly boil it down to I design coffee equipment, but I think when I'm talking to someone who's closer to the industry and maybe wants a little bit more specifics, I think especially in the more individual contributor portion of it, like the critical parts of the design that I love to do, I started calling it hardware interface design. Secretly, I wrote a Wikipedia entry for it in school, and my whole goal was to incept it into existence by the time I was applying for a job. It didn't totally work out, but if you look at the edit history, it's basically me and anonymous me. But it's less that I was trying to invent a new thing, and it was more that I was hoping to find other people who say, oh yes, that's what I do, and we call it XYZ. And so if someone at some point told me, oh no, this has a normal name, here it is, like that would have been great. I call it a day and I apply to those jobs, but hasn't happened yet. So yeah, hardware interface design is sort of what I go with for now, and I think it's a nice way to try and describe the interface elements on physical products. I think you see some people call it physical UX, some people call it like hardware UX. It's all kind of in that same boat. I think now that I've been working at Fellow for a couple of years, I definitely like expanded my set beyond like what I can do as like an individual. So I am doing a little bit more on industrial design, on packaging, on product management, and a couple other things. But yeah, I think for like my career as a designer, I was pretty narrow in that sort of hardware interface design track.
And hardware interface to you means like how a human would approach an interface with that good, right? Like for example, if I had a handle on this glass, that would be part of the hardware interface, like how I'm acting in interface with the hardware. For a coffee machine, what have been like the interesting, or I'll call like non-obvious parts of hardware interface that took a lot of thought or effort to get to feel perfect or right?
Yeah, I mean, the handle is probably like, if I'm building kingdoms, that's probably like the one where we're really pushing the limits of what this is called. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's hardware UX, which it is, right? Like it's almost a classical, like like in Don Norman's book, like that's his canonical example of UX. But like in terms of like as a trade and like directly when I'm working with other people, especially if there's other industrial designers on the project, then I shy away a little bit of like when it's purely ergonomic and there are people who are even better at that than I am, especially if I'm working with them on that same project. But I think for like the coffee maker, for example, the stuff where it gets really gnarly and it doesn't necessarily fit cleanly in industrial design is things like the way our machine can switch from single serve to batch brew. I'm not trying to sell you one, but just like it's a complicated problem that's interesting because we wanted to maintain really high quality, whether you're doing a small amount of coffee or a large. And fundamentally, you need to distribute the water from the shower head differently because we actually have different baskets. Because we realize like the way the coffee extracts is super different and you want the bed set up differently. And so even just boiling it down to like, okay, like how are we going to do this, right? Is this fully mechanical and automated? Are we going to do one monolithic thing? Or if you are switching things, what's the right amount of things to make a customer have to fiddle with when going from one thing to another? And then what's like an adequate amount of fidelity that we're making them do, right? Like you could make it a fully analog thing where they're like dialing in like the bore on each of the holes. Like there's a lot of like crazy stuff you could do. And where we ended up with is there's two things you have to change. You swap out the baskets, and then you turn the dial on the shower head between one position and another.
That's
but
like
even
the
then,
valve.
as like, yeah, it's like a valve. It's reverse threaded, so at least like you turn it to the left, even though it's closing it, it's like less coffee and then more coffee. So even that was like a little bit of like non-intuitive, like from like the mechanical engineer we fought because he's like, that's not
how knobs
have you ever heard of righty tighty? Yeah. I was like, yes, I've heard of righty tighty, but
but if you want
fundamentally
more coffee,
it's like
I want it to go to
more
the right.
coffee, less coffee. Yeah. So I think for the most part, no one's ever been confused about it. So I felt like we make the right choice there. But there's a lot of like little UX moments in that in making those decisions. But even then, like having to change the shower head position and change the basket is not obvious, especially if you've used a coffee maker before. So even then there was debates on like, okay, how instrumented do we want this? And so on the shower head, we instrumented it with one magnet on off. And so because you can turn it from one to the other, you can also fully remove the shower head, and we don't distinguish between no shower head in one of the positions.
Yeah.
But like you do that very rarely for cleaning. Whereas on the basket, you have to actually swap it out. So we put two magnets because we needed to know, like, is there no basket? Because that's way worse to brew into. And so even, to me, a lot of that is this sort of balance of both, it's like UX, there's industrial design, there's engineering, and like, okay, like how much money are we going to spend on that? Like what's too much fussiness for the customer? What's too much tech? And trying to
what
find
gets
the right
too
middle
unreliable
point
from a sensor perspective, like over time, like, oh man, I hate my thing because the smart sensor always breaks and I have to bypass it.
And so is that really like the key when you created award-winning products or been a part of teams that have absolutely done that at Fellow? Is that sort of like the decision-making criteria and like that sort of complexity of decisions on the form and the factor, is that basically what plays into like making something great, like you've already
Like
done?
from good to great,
From
right?
good to great, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for us especially, because we really try and differentiate our brand not just on the aesthetic, but also in the functionality, and then oftentimes on the ease of use. And the ease of use and the functionality both a lot of times tend to complicate the product in certain ways.
How
like
so?
the to have higher quality coffee, oftentimes you have to complicate the actual like makeup of the device.
Like
And
how you
a
apply
lot
the
of
water to the coffee. You might have to control
Yeah,
the rate that
like we use a really
goes.
fancy heater, which has its own whole new like off-road stuff we had to do to figure out how to get that to happen, where it's like a flow-through heater, but it's not really a normal flow-through
Because
heater.
it's got
and
better
so
temperature
there's-
control with a tighter temperature range. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And it's but also it's a part that some of our competitors use in millions of machines that are like for espresso makers. So it's like it's experimental for the application rather than experimental for the world. And that was also kind of an intentional thing where we weren't really at a point where we had so much R&D time and space to really like invent a heater, but we saw this little break in the clouds where there's this through line. We're like, oh, why has no one used this somewhat newer but also somewhat commodity part in a new way? But even then, like giving then that temperature control to people, how do we give people that power while then also not making the complexity of the user really high too? And so a lot of it is balancing like, okay, does this make the product more complicated to make, and does it make it more complicated to use? And sometimes like the more pro-y thing is less complicated to use because you can just make it more like you reduce the guardrails,
Right.
Like you don't need to add all the sensors, you don't need to add all of these things, if you
If the
can
user's
trust
an
that-
expert.
yeah, if the user's either an expert or they have this as the most important thing in their life,
Right.
where they're going to really care. But for a lot of for a lot of people who buy our product, it isn't the most important thing in their life. They're paying us to make this easy,
To make
but
great
also
coffee
to
easy.
be good.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think this is the important part of like this fun place you play in, which I think this is very similar to the cycling space, where coffee is a thing that many people consume. Many people own bicycles, right? Most people own a Walmart bike that is just a bike to get them on around on nice days, right? Go to the park and back. Some people own a bike to get to work, and some people are the weekend warrior that are going to, spend lots of money on the lightest and the stiffest and the strongest bike. And it's also fashion. Coffee is also this place in space. Many people consume and make coffee at home or consume it in bought in store. Many people just want a reliable coffee machine that doesn't break. Some people would pay more money for a reliable coffee machine that makes great coffee. And then there's a whole subset of the market that wants the most control and kind of like the nerdiest aspect of getting into their craft. And I think that's what's cool about coffee and cycling is like they're one of the few markets that has what I call that whole spectra, from the user that wants the cheapest thing because they just need it as a function, to the normal person that's willing to pay for quality, to the crazy person that wants all the control and the highest quality that money can buy.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah. In terms of complexity too, there's such a huge range in terms of how you make coffee, right? Like Turkish coffee is the most metal way to drink coffee.
Yeah.
Like you take the coffee, you grind it up, you put it into a cup, you
And you
boil
add
it with
hot
the
water.
water, and you eat the coffee. Like you eat the whole thing.
Right. Like
Like there's no filtering. Like there's no mess. Like it's just you eat the whole thing. In that way, matcha is also the most metal way to have tea because
Right.
you eat the whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then like French press is kind of like one step above that. We're like, well, maybe we shouldn't eat the whole coffee. We'll filter it a little bit. But either way, it's like basically in a big glass cup. You mix it around and then you pour it out.
Yep, and you are mechanically get rid of those grinds, which is admittedly my least favorite part about French press. I love the coffee. I actually really like the way French press tastes on cold days. I want a hot French press. Like, that's delicious. I hate cleaning my French press. It is like the thing that gets me to not do it.
Yeah, I agree. For me, filter coffee, whether it's through a drip machine or pour over, to me is one of the most balanced ways of fussiness to fussiness, I guess. Like fussiness in coffee versus fussiness in practice.
Right.
Where it's really easy to get rid of. You just take the whole thing and you put it in the compost bin. It's paper. So there's some consumable element to it, but so is the coffee. But then
And they're
also
both
like, it's
plant-based
not
if
that
you're doing it
complicated.
right.
Yeah.
Another question I have, Basher, is when you're creating a new product, you obviously have a ton of different stakeholders involved, from the business case, the marketing case, the actual like product development, the engineers that are a part of it. Sort of, what are like some success stories that you found like successfully navigating those like key stakeholders to like launch these products, and what are some things like that you've experienced?
That's a good question. I think, let's see. I mean, honestly, not to keep going to Aiden, but for us, one of the bigger success, I mean, for me personally, one of the bigger success stories is in pushing for single serve and batch brew to coexist in the machine. I think when we first were concepting it, we were thinking, okay, let's make a really great, highly controllable batch brew machine. But then like talking to people, looking at some of the user journeys, like a lot of folks are making one cup for themselves, but feel ridiculous buying a machine that
Just
does
for that.
just that. Yeah. And vice versa, would have a hard time buying a batch machine if they're going to make more coffee than they need to drink.
Every day,
Um,
right? As part of
every
their
day.
everyday like ritual kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we were also seeing like the same person is different on different days, which makes sense because they're human. But like you might have people over on the weekend, or you might drink coffee with other people who live in your house on the weekend. But maybe on a weekday, you may have slightly different schedules. You're busy. You're making just the cup for yourself. And so I think that really inspired us to try and make a single product that can do both, even though it added complexity, it added cost, it added a ton of and complexity to us, but also complexity to the user. Like it came with significant trade-offs that we thought through and really considered dearly, because we could have made a far simpler product had we chosen not to do that.
I think there's so
But
much
it was worth it.
Yeah, I think there's so much value in, like you just said, and like working through that conversation to come out to the other side and say, hey, we're going to do this, even though this seems a little bit counterintuitive. Can you kind of walk us through that, as much as you can, in terms of, how do you kind of guide people along the way to like land on this, as opposed to either going left to right, or the individual self-serve or the batch brew?
When like my question is, who are the stakeholders you're talking to, both internal, like I'm sure there's engineering and manufacturing and the rest of the design team, and then who are you talking to externally? And for a company the size of Fellow, how many users do you actually talk to or survey to make these choices?
Yeah, I mean, as a caveat, I always aspire for all of this to be better. I will at least start with what we have done, and maybe we can eventually transition to what I wish we could do.
Okay.
Or
I
would
love
do.
that.
Yeah, let's do that.
But yeah, like what we did for this is we reached out to a bunch of our customers who live in the San Francisco Bay Area, because that's where our headquarters are. We got like a couple dozen people to try out prototypes. We had some surveys sent out. We also have a whole email database that we reach out to for people who are fanatical, especially about our product. Like we have like a whole customer base that we can pull
That
to.
are like-
We even like
In a beta program, you can email and ask questions. Please take the survey. Which one of these things would you use more often, et cetera?
Yeah, we even like reached out on Instagram and got some feedback that way. We also have a lot of non-normal people. Like we have, what's the best way to put it? I'll not categorize it. Like we have like our customers are both like normal people who go and buy it at Amazon, but also our distributors. They're roasters, they're resellers, they're like retailers. Like we have a big variety, and so we go and we pitch concepts to them as partners. Like they see a lot more than us. They see. They have their own customers that they understand, that they research. So we are working with like Williams-Sonoma and Crate & Barrel. We talk to a good amount. We also talk to some of our more like local distributors, because we also like we sell at smaller coffee shops. So especially if we're trying to understand like coffee. We have a lot of really great relationships there with like roasters, nerds, those retailers. But then we do try and reach out to, especially for something like Aiden that's a little bit more mass market. We do try and get some of these more broader opinions on like, okay, you're not really into coffee,
But you sell coffee products in and around your retail store. What would make you buy this? Or do you have any customer data to help influence these choices? And so like my question was, would you categorize these people as like buyers? Like the buyers for Williams-Sonoma, the buyers for Target who pick what go on the shelf? Or who are the titles of these kind of people you get to talk
buyers
to?
is the right word I was looking for before. Yes, we would call them buyers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're looking through not just the boots on the ground consumer market, like these are the consumers, our ICP. You have to go up market into here are the people that help get my product to my ICP. Here's who they serve. And that's super fascinating for like us to talk about, because in our world in hardware and product development, we are often what does the end user want and less in the business case. And you guys had to take in consideration what is the business case for Fellow and our partners that help get our product out in the market, which I think is such a cool blend of design and go-to-market strategy of like that this is why the podcast exists, to like uncover these like untalked about gems of who you actually have to talk to, not just my core user.
Yeah, and we do a mix of like, yeah, sure, like there's market research, right, on like, should we even make a coffee maker?
Sure.
And then once we're like sized it all and we're feeling pretty good about the business, and like, sure, right, like individual product decisions do affect the performance of the product. So it's totally hard to separate all that out. But we do then also go back to some of these folks because we have some of these relationships where we can say, hey, like, here's the latest update on the work in progress ADA. Are you excited about this? How do you guys feel about it? It's all input. It's not really like we're necessarily asking for permission, especially if they're excited about the product, like when it comes to the buyers. Mm-hmm. But we do take their feedback really seriously. And there's a lot of times where they've said, they've come up with either a couple features or they've had like sort of feedback about some stuff seeming too complex, where we take it to real heart and we try and change it before, we make them buy it from us.
No, Nate, I think that's such a cool side of the narrative that I could have never had on my bingo card when Deanna and I were like going to go ask this question, like, who do you talk to when you develop a coffee machine? Like, how do you get enough feedback? That wasn't on my bingo card. That's so neat. And then, of course, I'm sure your internal engineering team yells at the design team all the time for, why are you making me do all this hard stuff? Because we do that internally here at Glassport all the time. The ID team and the electrical and ME team will, Spider-Man point at each other. It's all your fault. This is hard today, and then you got to go work together to go figure out a way to get out of it, make the clients happy.
I even think it's a great point too, even for like startups, folks that are making a net new product and, not just looking at your initial beachhead ICP and also thinking a little bit ahead of time and saying, okay, well, eventually this product could maybe be on the shelves of a Walmart or a Best Buy or something like that. Actually reaching out to the buyers, saying, hey, look, this is what we're building. Getting on the radar early. Obviously, you're probably not at the scale where they'll actually take you seriously, but maybe they're willing to give you some advice and some feedback that you can actually implement, like you mentioned, directly into the product. I think that's fantastic. The other question I have is, so you mentioned, that's how you did it the initial way. You also said like this is what you maybe would have done a little bit different. I'm excited to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think with the buyers, I'm mostly happy with our ability to like reach out, like, because we have these existing relationships. Like, obviously, we're not cold emailing Costco and saying, like, I think we work with them, but like, let's pretend we don't work with them. We're not cold emailing them and saying, hey, I have some ideas for a coffee. Like, we don't do that. It's more that like they're coming by for a review, or maybe like we're in like a review call already for like our existing lineup. Mm-hmm. We're talking about new product development, and then we get some of their thoughts. So I think we have some of that trust built up in like having worked with them for many years, some of them 10 years. And so I think like it's nice, and I feel lucky to be able to draft off of that. What I want to do more on the other end is then with like customers and doing more upfront research there. So I think like we try really hard to do internal research, and we do like have these sort of like 20-30 person pools of beta testers and things like that. What I'd love to do is like even earlier than like beta tests is like we're like prototyping and building out concepts and testing those on like real people who don't work at the company. I mean, like we have like a good variety of folks at the company, so like we're still able to like seed a little bit of a fresh pool, but just to hit like bigger numbers and get really fresher takes, and then be able to have better alignment of our target demographics.
Earlier in the design cycle is what you're looking for.
Yeah. So yeah, we're like really even just high level, like, are these features good? And not having to fully lean on the buyers, and then we can really like show even detailed designs and like walk them through. Yeah. And I'd like to do that more than what we do today.
And so double clicking into that, we think about that at Glassport all the time. How can I get out of the four walls of our business and go ask people about this new, I'm going to use the fictitious IoT toaster that I always use in all my fake ideas. So we need to go figure out what features of an internet connected toaster would users like, and like, is it a focus group? Is it a survey with different renders showing different features, conceptually in 2 dimensions? Is it a 3D animation they react to, or is it AR where like they're able to quickly manipulate, the UX on the toaster where we have buttons instead of the push down lever? It's all, a touchscreen. What methods could you think of, or have you thought of, that you'd like to implement? Is it just phone calls and Google Meets and Zoom calls? Like what level of fidelity do you think would be the most useful that you aren't currently doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think models I think would be great. I think a little bit of like interactive stuff. I think like physical interaction stuff would be really great to like test on people, because sometimes it's really hard, especially like unless you're going through like a company and it's super blind. Like a lot of times, right? Like you walk up, like if people aren't jerks, you walk up to them and you're essentially saying, "Do you like my project?
Do you like my baby?"
They're gonna,
Which is the worst way to get customer feedback is to
like,
jump
is
on a
my
call and
baby
say,
ugly?
Yeah, and they'll be like, no, it's so beautiful, and then you're like, okay, give me money for the baby, maybe the product, and they're like, no, then you're in a bad spot, right?
Yeah. So I think like over Zoom sometimes can be tough for some of those things, because then you're really asking for their analysis, whereas I mean, for like software stuff, maybe different story, right? Like you can have them actually run through stuff, screen record, and see how they do.
Yeah.
But I think I've learned the most from when I give someone like a prototype or even a paper mock-up or whatever, and I look at how they're doing, and I'm judging their performance. I'm also getting their opinion about how they think they're doing and how they feel about it, because that's also important. But you kind of need both, and it's hard to just take their own assessment at face value, even when they are they're trying their best, but they can only be, the best they can be.
It's kind of like the behavioral analysis. So I had a conversation with a gentleman who created the Delta Touch faucet, for example. And he said they, brought in a bunch of folks. They literally scheduled and they went into people's like on Thanksgiving and then watched how the moms were, putting together the Thanksgiving dinner. And what was super fascinating was that they noticed that the moms would walk in carrying these big turkeys and would lean over to touch to grab the top of the faucet to turn it on, and they were like, "Oh, what if we could just
you could tap it with your elbow?
What if you could just tap it or hover over it, right?" And it's like that's kind of the birth of what was like one of their more successful products too. So I'm curious as well, Basher, what sort of cool, or maybe you don't know, maybe that's the whole point you're doing it, in terms of things that you think will come of that, like doing the like very early research and kind of getting some of these initial product iterations in front of folks to touch and feel and experiment. What sort of things do you think that will come up that would maybe be unexpected, that you would have otherwise gotten more consistent results from the internal team?
I mean, one of the most, I think focus groups get a really bad rap. I think mostly because of Steve Jobs, but
that and movies and video never show them kindly.
Yeah, I think like any tool, it can be used poorly. I have had professionally I've only ever done a focus group once, and it was fantastic. And I did not run it. It was not my idea, but I work with this product marketing manager, Anissa, on the Pixel Buds, technically version 2. The product name her team came up with for the version 2 of Pixel Buds was to call them the Pixel Buds. So it'd be hard to Google this. But there was a version before So I worked on the ones that had no cable, and we had one that had the cable, and that was like came out around the same time as AirPods, a little after.
Got it.
And one of the things she did that I thought was so brilliant is when they did the focus group, they did two things. One is they gave everyone homework, and they actually made them use both products for a week each leading up to the focus group. So not going into the focus group cold. They're actually doing a bunch of stuff, coming in with opinions they're building, and then arriving having used both AirPods and our first generation Pixel Buds. And then they're talking about it together as a group.
That is neat.
It seemed like there was a lot less people just piling onto other people's opinions, because they all came in with opinions of their own, and they were able to pull from their experiences over the past 2 weeks to speak to them. And they were much more informed than just like their hot takes, like on the spot.
And you're also kind of avoiding the group bias as well, right? If you're net new, you're in a room full of a group of individuals you don't know. One person says, "Oh, I don't like this." Well, I agree with that because I don't want to sound silly or what have you. I might have a different opinion, but if they're already coming with their preconceived notions, they're fundamentally walking into that space wanting to back up their preconceived. So they're already anchored in what they believe, and so they're just, if anything, they're just going to go find people that agree with what they're agreeing with, which is fine. That's the real feedback. What's
brilliant. Amazing is so many of them were then able to back up their disagreement, not just with "I didn't like it," but "I didn't like it, comma," and then insert anecdote and story, which was amazing.
The battery died at the end of my day an hour before I wish they did every single day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, or like I had a hard time pairing it, or like whatever it was. And they tried to balance it where like half of them were Android users, half of them were iOS. They made both of them use both. The other thing that I thought was so smart, and maybe this isn't that unique, but I really loved what they did, which is at the end of the whole thing, we got all the feedback. It was great. Also, they had no idea because we gave them both AirPods and Google. They had no idea it was like Google hiring them.
Yeah, it might have been Apple hiring them.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. Although, depending on how much they've read about Steve Jobs, I think they probably could. But anyway, it could have been neither who hired them. But anyway, like we tried to make so they didn't directly know that Google was running this study. But the thing they did at the end of the study, which I loved, which was the end, they said, okay, we're going to go around the room, and congratulations, I have really great news for you. You can take one of these home forever.
But you have to pick.
But you have to pick. Because it's really hard to say, like, how do you simulate buying, right?
Yeah.
And, like, without just making people buy it. But, yeah, they made them go around the room, like, and, like, as they're walking out, they're like, okay, like, which one do you want to keep? Well, you know, and they made everyone make their choice, say why. And then they did another double, which is like, just kidding, you can have both, it's fine.
Yeah, like we can't give them to anyone. You already worn them; they're yours. But we needed to make you like truly pick with dollars, with perceived value, which one you're like, I like that. I might have to steal that one.
And then drawing to the outcome. So what were the product decisions? Maybe you can't share that were maybe surprised. It were just like the cool things they got out of that study from the implementation of that data.
I mean, some of it validated my own personal crankiness, which was like the cable between them really sucks. And having like truly wireless earbuds that you can just use, because they had all these stories of like, oh, well, I'll just use one. It's really hard to use just one if they're tethered.
With a cable that hangs down, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Beats does this clever thing where they have the like collar that sits on your neck, and so that makes it so that you can put one only in your ear. But having like, it's a pure balanced thing with nothing to anchor it on your neck, it would just basically drag the other one out. So it was like one thing that we felt really solid in, because it actually we had to do a lot of experimental stuff to get to truly wireless. Like Apple was way ahead on that. So that directly drove like, okay, we have to invest in this. It can't be a feature we can cut. Because there was other mitigations, because part of why the cable beyond the one earbud use case, which we didn't realize was as popular as it was. I mean, now it's so obvious, like that's how people use AirPods all the time.
Right.
But this is when they were new and people thought they were silly, which is insane. But
absolutely,
yeah.
I think that just take a break. I do think that Apple quietly like revolutionized pop culture with AirPods, and no one realized they were doing it until it's too late.
Yeah,
Like
when they came out, they launched like just after the holidays, so they missed the holiday season, which is insane. They launched in like I think January or December, like something like
Way too late to actually make holiday.
Yeah, everyone made fun of them. People were embarrassed to wear them. And the thing Apple did, which is really hard for a company to do, is they white-knuckled through it, and they kept selling them. They kept working on them. Because they had worked on that product for at least 4 years leading up to that launch. They put a lot of time and effort into it. And then they kept going through it. And then by the next holidays, it turned around.
And what's crazy is they weren't the best headphones. They didn't have the best audio quality in the moment. They didn't have the best mic quality in the moment.
And I remember at that time as well, like Beats was huge, and like the bass on your headphones was like so important. At least with my generation for sure.
Well, and
I wouldn't
and
be annoying about this. They weren't the best headphones, but I think they were the best earbuds.
Oh, you think they
still
were?
are.
Like the original,
think-
the launch set?
Yeah, not
Amazing.
not in audio quality.
Correct.
Not like
These
yeah.
are the best headphones. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And I'm going pure like they weren't the best audio quality, but like
Oh no.
what they
Still
nailed
aren't.
was the user experience of the headphones that are always with you, and they work in every situation good enough, and therefore everyone's wear them all the time, right? And I think that just changed pop culture under the radar, and it took a long time for the change to become like, oh no, that did happen, but it totally did.
Yeah, and they made a bunch of bold decisions too. Like the stem on, especially the original one, was
pretty
such
long.
a thing that people made fun of. And there's all the memes where people cut the cord, and then that's how Johnny Ive came up with the aesthetic. But if you break it down, that stem is powerful for so many reasons. Like first of all, especially for a V1 product where they were having a hard time with battery, they could use a jelly roll battery and not a coin cell, and so they didn't have to insert it for going inside your body. It was much easier to figure out. it moved the microphone closer to your face, which was huge, rather than like in here, which on me is no big deal, but if you have hair, bigger deal, like longer hair. I do have some hair. And then also the antenna could use that whole length.
Oh yeah, you
and
actually
it gave
have
you
a
a whole
long antenna
stem.
now instead of a little patch antenna somewhere.
Yep. And then it gave you a whole stem for like grabbing
Gripping.
it and then leading it into the case. And there was a whole area for hitting the accelerometer. So like there's so many benefits to that design, even though like, yes, it looks lazy, but it's very intentional. And they stuck to it because it is a good design. I mean, they've made modifications since, but there's a lot of stuff they got right. And then they also were one of the first ones to do a battery in the case so that when you're not using it, it is charging.
Right.
And that the effective battery life was way longer than the immediate battery life of a single bud.
Right. And the other thing is because they're not tethered together, when I get the doo-doo, they're both getting low, you put one in the case and it is charged up enough to use before the other one actually dies, which goes in the case. And then now you can play hot potato. If you're on a conference call that's going to last for 5 hours, right, like a big meeting or whatever, you can use your AirPods continuously because one of them is charging while one of them is working. And I want to write this to the Bose engineers. Whoever at Bose decided you can't charge and use Bluetooth on your headphones at the same time on my over-ears should be shot because I can't believe that's a problem. If my Bose headphones die, they're done. They're cooked until you charge them again. Again, this is all about user experience and how products are built and I feel like we got really off topic, but this has been super fun.
No,
I mean, that specific problem is something that actually we ran into on our scale.
Oh yeah.
Not to try and bring it back to
No,
full
this
product,
is
but,
perfect.
Yeah. So one of the frequent complaints with Acaia scales for a cafe is that when it dies, and this is why they end up buying like racks. They're great scales. Like that company makes a really nice product, but fundamentally it's USB charging, and you can't use it while it's charging for two reasons. One, that's not how the circuit works the way they designed it. But two, the port is attached to the way pan. So, because it's reverse loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So fundamentally, even if they change the circuit, they'd
You
have
would
to
still
change
hit the
design.
cable if it was going to weigh down.
Yeah, like the cable, or rather, like the cable would be adding weight to the thing you're weighing.
It's going to,
Yeah.
the cable's in now your measurement, not in the base platform that's connected to your table.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
who
still
knows if
better
the
than Magic
cable
Mouse
moves
that you
around
flip
and stuff
upside
like
down.
that. Like it, exactly. Yeah. So we were very intentional on our device to make it so that the way pan was separate from where the USB-C port was. There are other trade-offs that come with that, but then we really wanted it so that you could just leave it plugged in if you are a cafe and use it all day and not have to think about it.
Oh, that's so important. I so appreciate when people are making battery-powered products that don't skip over I know it's complex, but hot plug and play, whatever you want to call it, like hot swap while charging. It's about to die. I can plug it in, continue use. I can unplug it and take it somewhere else while it's being used without interrupting use. But I can use it plugged in or wireless or both because it's so critical to the user experience where I'm not interrupting my flow if the battery is getting dead for whatever reason. And whatever my product is, mouse, headphones, weight scale for coffee grounds.
Yeah, exactly. And is a choice like that, like classically, is that UX? Is that industrial design? Is that engineering? Like,
It's
is that
product. It's
management?
all
Like,
of them.
yes, like it's all of it. And that's where that's the exact kind of thing that can fall through the cracks, right? Because there is no like obvious, here's the home for where that decision lives. And it's the kind of stuff I love doing. But yeah, that's the game.
Totally. I think that answers back like the original statement you had at the beginning, kind of you creating your own kind of label or name for what you do, right? And I think you're exactly right. I find that folks that are deeply passionate about something, even if it falls into a category, the reason categories exist is because someone created a name for it and ascribed it a category. It seems like from design you do the exact same thing because you're passionate about it. You create your own name if you want to, because you can also like leave your own kind of stamp on the market at large. One of the last questions I've got is for advice for early designers. You've been at Google, you've helped with the Pixel earbuds, you've obviously done all the things you've done at Fellow, and just the story you've shared over the last 35, 45 minutes has been fantastic. What sort of advice do you have for someone just starting out in industrial design, or insert the name for what you really need to do, and what things you think they should be thinking about and focusing on in 2025?
Sure. I mean, I think for starters, a lot of people, when you watch a movie or you watch a film, you get this idea that everyone finds their calling. It kind of sort of like runs into them, and that then you know what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and you're good. And I think the reality is, sure, some people are lucky enough for that to happen. That didn't happen to me. Maybe a little bit, but not really. Like there's some people who knew they were going to be a doctor from day one. They studied to be a doctor. They became a doctor, and they're like, hell yeah, I love being a doctor.
Yeah, this is everything I ever thought it would be.
Yeah, good for them. Must be nice. I think
Glad I'm
for
not
everyone
alone.
else, like in a world where you really value wanting to have your job and your career be something that's really core to your identity, or like you like is a big part of your life, then I think you really need to spend a lot of time investing in finding what that is. And I think it takes, if you're not one of the lucky few people, it takes a lot of active time, thought, and effort to get there. And some of that is trying a bunch of stuff, like especially in school where you have access to a lot of things to try. People are really nice to you because you're like fundamentally you say you're a student, and that's like a label that's really useful to just like roll up to different people and ask for advice and
Or
try
an
different things.
internship,
And
or a job.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, you're adorable. Come home with me. We'll go try this out. I do this to interns all the time. They just have the right personality that might not even have
Yeah.
the right technical fit, but because of where they're at, I'm like, I'll let you try anything once.
yeah, and it's just like trying a lot of stuff. And, dude, that takes so much time and effort, and and like, but you got to do it, right? And then not just trying it, but then being continually critiquing, like, okay, did I like that? Why? Like, is it the verbs of what I was doing? Is it the like conceptual? Is it like how it made me look in the community or feel? Like, all of those are valuable to different things for different people. Like, is it like the service you're providing? Like, there's like, I think critiquing and like trying a bunch of stuff and then critiquing and understanding like what is it about it that made you really love it, I think is huge, and that helps you then iterate and get hopefully to the point that you find something that you really love. I do think it's worthwhile to not be fully trapped by like whatever exact product or exact titles and things that you see on the market as like the only options you have. Now, as it is, there's quite a lot of options, so like it's worth trying a bunch of this stuff before just like making stuff up. But like you shouldn't feel limited by it. The thing I'll caveat is the second you reject an existing title, like all of the existing titles, and try and forge your own path, there's a lot of stuff you get for free by picking a title that people understand or are unfamiliar with, that now you are, whether you like it or not, you're burdening yourself with doing. And if you don't take this on, you're going to have a bad time and feel misunderstood. So some of that is, from a business perspective, what is your value? From a team perspective, who needs to be around you? Who do you collaborate with? How are you inserted? And then who needs to which home do you live in, right? Like if you're saying you don't ascribe to any one thing, you still need, like, unless you're
Who you're
your own
replacing.
consultants.
Right. That's
Yeah.
how I was pitching.
Oh, and
like,
who you're replacing is also really valuable
Like,
to understand.
biomedical engineers, when they're interviewing at Glassboard, I'm like, all right, we don't hire biomedical engineers as I don't have a role for that. Do you identify as a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, or a software engineer, embedded or otherwise? Because all biomedical engineers are one of the major engineering disciplines in a trench coat studying, the human body or biology more so than that one core skill, but they're all focused in one. And I always make them identify, and they hate the question. They grind. They're like, no, I'm a biomedical engineer. I'm like, that's cool. I'm going to pretend you told me you're a mechanical engineer with a specialty in biology and human mechanics, and that's awesome. I hire for that. And it's this thing that to emulate what you just said. If you're going to reject a title like mechanical engineer that I might hire for, or industrial designer that I might hire for, or UX UI designer that I might hire for, I only have those roles on my website. You're going to apply for one of those jobs and tell me you do insert other thing. I might hire you anyways. But you have to convince me that you can do that job and the special thing that you bring to the table.
Yeah, and that's the other half of this, right? Like, whether you're rejecting a known title or not, I think understanding, like, when you're applying to a job, if you're doing that and not forging, like, truly your own, like, totally off-road path.
Yeah.
Understanding the place you're applying to, right? Like, are they a place that hires specialists and they're building a team of who sums up to a whole? Or are they hiring a bunch of generalists, intentionally so, or then it's fluid? Or are they a big company who's doing a mix of both? I think, like, understanding the dynamics of the place that you're applying to and really speaking to that in your cover letter, speaking to that in, like, what you're presenting in your portfolio, And I think like a portfolio is a powerful tool for basically everyone who makes stuff, whether you're an engineer or a designer. I think especially for an engineer because fewer engineers have portfolios.
I am
It's just like a visual way to show what you did.
I'm clipping all of that, and that is going in our job posting website. Like, if thou shalt not need apply without a portfolio, no matter what your title is at Glassboard. Basher, that is,
Yeah.
like, I preach this at career fairs to all the young mechanical, electrical, software engineers. I'm like, write down all the goofy stuff that you do. I don't care if it's in a robotics club or a go-kart club or a Rube Goldberg competition or you're making a project on yourself. Just snap some photos, write down 3 bullet points in a PowerPoint, and keep adding to this PowerPoint from your freshman year until you graduate. And submit that with your resume. It can be really haphazard. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be organized. Just let me see your fluid thought process as a designer of any kind.
Yeah.
And that's going to get me to hire you 10 times over your resume that said you had a 4.0 and attended these courses and might have had a cool internship at some company I know of or not, right?
Yeah, I don't know the rubric. I don't know who gave you that grade. Like,
Yeah, I don't care. But man, that design looked cool. Or that thought process of going from I wanted to make a better IoT connected toaster, my favorite fictitious thing, and how you iterated through that. I want to see the design process, your design language, what questions you asked and tested first. That's fascinating to me.
yeah, and like not just what did you do, but why?
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, I tried XYZ thing. This didn't work, so I did this.
And
It's a very like
I cared to test XYZ first because ABC was important to me and XYZ was the test for ABC. And I knew I could figure out how to make toast. I didn't know if I knew how to do IoT, or maybe it's vice versa. Someone that was great at IoT and had no idea how to make delicious toast.
I think you guys are really hitting around the head. I mean, it's kind of showing that you have the ability to solve problems. I mean, that's kind of fundamentally what an organization, especially we live in America, so it's capitalistic. And so in a business, your job is to basically ongoing solve problems. You solve problems consistently in design. Grant solves problems consistently in engineering and for the business at large.
I mean, not often. I'm bad at this.
Right, yeah. We're at least paid to do it. I'm not saying that we do it very well. And then I solve problems like go-to-market for like startups and things like that. It's like, figure out what you enjoy solving problems for, and like you'll find that even if you're applying for a mechanical role and you join an organization, you can still bring who you are, your ability to solve X problem, even though it might fit into a different box. The organization will typically, from what I've seen, like welcome that. They want you to come in and be able to solve problems different ways that other folks can't do it. So absolutely, we just would encourage folks that everything Basher just said, absolutely create.
Double click.
Yeah, double click on that. Display your ability to solve problems in the way that you solve problems, because that's unique and that's valuable.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add is if you do have a portfolio, and I think especially so for designers, it doesn't really matter what classes you took or why the things are in there that got in there, but fundamentally, you can't walk away from what's in your portfolio, and the portion of the portfolio that you spend on certain things will always be taken at face value as you care about this. So if you ended up taking a lot of biomedical equipment design classes and your whole portfolio is biomedical equipment and you apply to a skateboard company, they're going to be confused.
Right.
And if you want to change that, the power of a portfolio is that you can go do a bunch of personal projects. And again, if you can explain your problem solving process, it's way harder, right? Because like probably you have to have then another job and you're trying to balance other things. So what I'm suggesting is not easy. But I think if you really want to work at that skateboard company and you never did any skateboard projects, then you should probably delete all your biomedical projects in your portfolio, put a bunch of skateboard projects in there and apply to the skateboard company. A lot of it is like, what's the risk, right? Like, can this person do this thing? It's really easy to answer that question of, yeah, because they've done it a lot before.
And I like what I see when they've done it. Like as a hiring manager, this is, oh man, I like the way they sketched that. I would be proud to present that to a client. Or I like the question they asked in their portfolio of like, I wondered how I could make toast better. And then you saw that their first test was to not build a toaster, but to truly like measure what good toast was. Right? If that is the first step, it's telling me how their design thinking works.
And even drilling down deeper, like even as banal as this is, like if let's say you did a bunch of user research in designing your IoT toaster, or maybe it just took so much time and effort for you, a lot of people will then put like, they will match the percentage of their portfolio page that they spend on something to the amount of time and energy they spent on it,
right,
rather than to how much they care about a thing. And there's so many times I've talked to a student who has a portfolio where like half of it is user research because that's what the class made them do. And they spent, they did, and they're proud of the work they did there, but they have no interest in ever doing that work ever again. And yet here it is, half their portfolio page is user research. And when I look at this,
I'm going to
it's
hire
like,
you
oh
for
wow,
user research.
looks like they really like doing this work. Like, so I think just being really thoughtful about like, yeah, what work are you showing? And you should really only put work in your portfolio that you want to do more of, because
Well,
people, if they like it, will ask you to do more of it.
And how do you present it? Because again, if I'm hiring for a mechanical engineer, I don't really care how organized their portfolio is or how beautiful it looks or the
Yeah.
how it makes me feel when I open it. I'm looking for like, oh, do they do like ask good questions and build good tests and build cool robots or whatever they're building IoT toasters. But if I'm hiring for a primarily like industrial design role, I'm looking at how they sketch. I'm looking at the font that they chose in their portfolio and how they organize and all the line spacings and the weighting's good. And does the white space look beautiful? And does it make me want to click to the next page, no matter whatever that I'm interested in, IoT toasters or race cars? Like, it's all about the visual presentation because that's the role I'm hiring for. So, like, it is one of those things that, like, your portfolio visually, amount of percentage per topic, holistically is a representation of you as a person and your skills and your interests.
Yeah, yeah. And then the only other sort of common trap I see is this correlation between a complex problem is how you get to a complex or interesting solution. And then people end up like, especially where like otherwise they don't need to do this, but for like a personal project especially, where they end up having a project where the first 45% of the project is explaining to you what this even is. Like, they're like multiple paragraphs deep into micropipetting before you even understand like what is the project they're doing, like what is the problem they're solving, what's the task they're doing. And I think like in as much as like, unless you're going to go into an incredibly niche industry, for a personal project, as best as you can, keep the briefs really, really simple, and then have what is complex is in the like fidelity and amazingness of your output. But your ceiling of how interesting your solution can be is not limited by how interesting the problem is.
Or complex. I think, because again,
Or complex.
Ironically, in design, my favorite solutions are the simplest. Right?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's this simple problem that I didn't even see as a problem in my everyday life, and someone made that simple problem that I had already written off as just part of doing life go away in an elegant way, and their solution wasn't complex. They solved it with a very small change to the status quo that made the experience better in that product, whatever that is. Again, as simple as removing the wire between two earbuds.
Or,
Right.
Yeah.
or like the things that you guys have done as well. You know, you're taking a technology that's widely used in another sector of the coffee industry. Oh, we're going to switch it up a little bit. It'll solve that problem here. Done.
Right. No, and
Yeah,
again,
fellows
that's great.
spent the last 10 years and probably spend the next 10 years and more figuring out different ways to put hot water on beans. And like, let me tell you, there's a lot of complicated ways you can do it.
I love that.
Well, to that, everybody, this is the Hard Tech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Herrick, my co-host, Grant Chapman. Basher, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.